However, actor Tony Danza is currently enjoying his third season on the fantastic hit series, Who's the Boss, after winning our hearts when he played in Taxi. Tony began his career as a boxer, which is likely why he's in such good shape on Who's the Boss. You've seen Tony Danza light up the screen in Who's the Boss and Taxi. But what if his off-screen life was a battlefield of unsaid sorrows and hidden struggles? What were the real causes of his? The answers to these questions will alter your perception of this legendary actor. Tony Danza was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1951. His parents weren't exactly wealthy. His mom was a bookkeeper, and his dad was a garbage collector. His family had deep ties to Italy, and his mom was an immigrant. Divorces. Did his pursuit of fame affect his relationships with his children? What is the story behind the incident that nearly killed him? And his father's family was from sunny Campania. His Italian heritage would greatly influence Tony's personality. He grew up in Brooklyn, where you had to be tough because street fights were frequent. Young Tony learned how to take care of himself quickly and wasn't scared to punch someone if necessary. However, Tony wasn't just tough. He also had a younger brother named MTY Jr., who would go on to own a restaurant in Los Angeles. The two brothers had a close bond despite, though their paths would diverge significantly. At the age of 14, his family packed up and relocated to Malvern, a more tranquil area of Long Island. Although school wasn't exactly Tony's forte, he wasn't the type of kid who spent hours studying. He was a born athlete, and his exceptional wrestling abilities earned him a spot at the University of Dubuque in Iowa. Tony's initial goal was to become a teacher, after earning a degree in history in 1972, but life had other ideas. After graduating from college, Tony's life took an unexpected turn in 1975, when his friends decided to play a practical joke on him by signing him up for a Golden Gloves boxing tournament, thinking it would be a good laugh. Turning out to be a natural in the ring, Tony surprised everyone by fighting his way to the semifinals. Jobs were hard to come by, and Tony found himself at a crossroads. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew he wasn't going to give up easily. He discovered that he had a genuine talent for punching, and people began telling him that he could go pro. For a while, boxing became Tony's life, as he fought his way up the ranks, winning 9 of his 12 fights, and knocking out his opponents in nearly all of them. That experience ignited a fire inside Tony, and he fell in love with boxing. He transitioned to acting, but boxing wasn't Tony's only passion. One day, while he was working out at the gym, 2 producers noticed him. They weren't looking for a fighter, but they needed an actor who could box for a new TV show. And Tony's tough guy appearance and natural charm fit the bill perfectly. He got the job, and with it, he got an agent who opened doors for him. Soon after, he was trying out for a part on the sitcom Taxi, and he got it. His life changed forever on Taxi. Tony worked with some of the funniest people in the business, including even after his acting career took off. Tony continued to fight and scored some impressive knockouts in 1978 and 1979. But the title shot he so desperately wanted never materialized. Eventually, Tony realized he had to make a decision, and hung up his gloves and threw himself into acting, leaving his boxing dreams behind. It was around the time Taxi was starting to start that Tony received another exciting offer, and was cast as was offered the role of Tony Banta on Taxi. But fate had other ideas. Tony had to make a difficult decision and chose to play Taxi. The rest, as they say, is history. The show became a classic, and Tony's character Tony Banta was a fan favorite. However, Tony missed out on more than just that. Tony was a gang member named Cowboy in the movie The Warriors, which was a gritty story about a New York City gang trying to survive a dangerous journey. Cast as the father in the sitcom, Sebastian Says, which was based on the life of comedian Sebastian Maniscalco. Tony even filmed the pilot episode, but the show was never picked up. This only serves to highlight the fact that, even for a gifted individual like Tony, not every opportunity leads to success. Tony's big break came in 1984 when he was cast in the lead role of Who's the Boss, playing Tony Melly, a single father and former baseball player who worked as a housekeeper. It was the ideal role for Tony, showcasing his charm, humor, and kind disposition. Before the show even started, things nearly took a drastic turn. 2 days prior to the start of filming, Tony got into some trouble. He got into a fight with a hotel bouncer and ended up facing possible jail time. Can you imagine Tony Melly behind bars? Fortunately, the judge had a different idea, and instead of sending Tony to jail, he sentenced him to 250 hours of community service. Tony was relieved that he avoided a bullet and could begin filming Who's the Boss on time. Who's the Boss wasn't just a hit, it was. When the show went into syndication, Tony wasn't just a supporting actor like he was on Who's the Boss? He was the main character in the show's star, and he excelled in that role. His performance as Tony Mitchell earned him 3 Golden Globe nominations, which is a pretty big deal in the acting world. The show was a phenomenon that ran for an incredible 8 seasons, from 1984 to 1992, and people couldn't get enough of it. It was one of the most watched TV shows at the time, and broke numerous records. Additionally, gave Tony his first opportunity to direct, which presented him with a whole new challenge and opportunity. Tony wasn't just an actor on Who's the Boss? He was proud of the show's success and used his influence to help shape its creative direction. It was a true labor of love, and that passion translated into a popular series that people still remember today. You might be surprised to hear that the show's writers initially intended for Tony Mitchell and his boss to be together. The actors Tony and Alyssa Milano, who played his daughter on the show, are working on a sequel series for Amazon's free streaming service. They announced the project back in 2020, and it's been a while since then. Tony had a different vision for his character, believing that the show's core was about 2 people who were attracted to each other, but didn't end up as a couple. That's exactly how the series ended, with a hint of possibility but no definitive romance, having some setbacks. But it's still in the works. Tony told ET Canada that they're just waiting for the writers to finish the script. So who knows, maybe we'll see what happened between Tony and Angela all those years later. Tony's talent and hard work weren't overlooked, though, as in 1988, he was awarded a star on the renowned Hollywood Walk of Fame, which was a huge honor and a symbol of his success and influence on the entertainment industry, including movies and theater. However, Tony's career wasn't just on television. He also made his big screen debut in the comedy, The Hollywood Knights in 1980. He went on to star in a number of other films, including Going Ape, Cannonball Run 2, and She's Out of Control. He even portrayed a baseball player named Mel Clark in the endearing film Angels in the Outfield. Later, he starred in the TV film 12 Angry Men and the highly regarded drama Crash. Tony's success demonstrated that he was a versatile actor who could play a variety of roles. Don't be confused with his later talk show, also called The Tony Danza Show, which ran from 2004 to 2006. He also had a role on the drama series Family Law for a couple of years, Tony's Talent, which even earned him an Emmy nomination for a guest role on the legal drama The Practice. On the small screen, he continued to perform even after Who's the Boss ended. He starred in a couple of sitcoms, Hudson Street and The Tony Danza Show, but neither of them lasted very long. Tony's charisma and wit made him an obvious choice for hosting, and from 2004 to 2006, he hosted his own talk show, simply named The Tony Danza Show, which was filmed in his hometown of New York City. The show was a lively mix of interviews, performances, and Tony's own brand of humor. But hosting a talk show wasn't always easy. In 2005, Tony got into a bit of a collision with NASCAR driver Rusty Wallace during a go-kart race, and Tony's kart overturned. Fortunately, neither of them wore a helmet, but Tony didn't let that deter him. Later that year, he returned to the track to challenge independent car driver Danica Patrick. This time, his brakes failed, and he crashed into a wall. But fortunately, he was unharmed. Perhaps racing wasn't Tony's thing. In 2006, the Tony Danza Show ended after 2 years on the air. The final live episode aired on May 26th, ending an era for Tony and his fans. But Tony still had more surprises in store. Sleeve. Tony's talent was not limited to television and film. He also took over Broadway, the world's largest stage, where he starred as Max Bellisto in the popular musical The Producers in both New York City and Las Vegas. To commemorate his Broadway success, Tony hosted the 4th season of The Contender, a reality show about boxing, which was a perfect fit for him given his background in the sport. However, Tony wasn't finished with Broadway yet, as in 2013 he starred in a musical adaptation of The Good Cop, a Netflix series that lasted only 1 season, demonstrated that Tony still had that spark and could bring a character to life with his charisma and energy. You might think of Tony as an actor or boxer, but he had another hidden talent singing long before he ever hit the big screen. He also played a funny dad in the romantic comedy Don John and a gruff ex-cop in the Netflix series The Good Cop. The show was a huge hit. Tony has a big voice, and he sang those old standards with gusto. He sang That's All Pennies from Heaven, I'll be seeing you, and even God Bless America. This was a side of Tony that many people hadn't seen before, but it showed that he's a man of many talents. In 2002, Tony recorded an album called The House I Live In, which is a collection of classic swing and big band tunes, just like the ones Frank Sinatra or Dean Martin used to sing. In addition to playing the lead role in the Netflix comedy series, The Good Sea, he also sang the show's theme song. It was a jazzy crooner-style song that was a perfect fit for Tony's voice. The funny thing is that Tony didn't even know he was going to sing the theme song until the last minute, when the show's creator asked him on a whim, and he recorded it very quickly. He was a little confused by the entire situation, especially since his co-star on the show was Josh Groen, a well-known singer. In 2009, at the age of 59, Tony returned to his roots and finally put his college degree to use by becoming an English teacher at Northeast High School in Philadelphia. This was a significant departure from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, but Tony was thrilled about the challenge, and his performance demonstrated once again that he is a multi-talented entertainer who is always up for a new challenge teaching career. His experience as a teacher was even turned into a reality show called Teach Cameras, followed Tony around as he dealt with the highs and lows of working with teenagers. He acknowledged that it wasn't always easy, and that he cried 3 times during his first week, because he was so overwhelmed by the responsibility of molding young minds. But he persevered. He taught a class, assisted the football team, and even organized a school dance. Tony was so dedicated to teaching that he turned down a position on Broadway in Lage Aux FS just to stay in the classroom. It was evident that teaching had become a passion for him. Just like in 2014, Tony partnered with John Chacha Chiara to purchase Oliva Dairy, a cheeseman with deep Italian roots. Tony has always been proud of his heritage and seized the opportunity to become a part owner of the oldest cheese shop in America. Tony wasn't just a silent partner. He worked in the shop, served customers, and even ran the Oliva stand at street festivals because he wanted to. It was a loss for Tony and Little Italy, but his efforts to preserve its history won't be forgotten. Tony continued to run the shop with passion and dedication, even after his partner passed away in 2015. However, things took a turn for the worse in 2022, when Ava Dare faced eviction. Sadly, the iconic shop closed its doors for good in 2023, ending Tony's time as a cheesemonger. Danza doesn't seem to be a huge fan of them, but back in 1998, he had a bit of a meltdown during a live TV interview. The news anchor was trying to get his attention, but Tony couldn't hear her. So instead of waiting patiently, he went on a tirade. "You end up on those news shows so often," Tony complained, "and those news shows are awful." He even claimed he didn't want to do the interview anymore and wasn't excited about being on the local news. The anchor persisted in trying to reach him, but Tony continued to complain, even joking that his interview would. It was a humorous but awkward moment that demonstrated Tony's frustration with the entire interview process. Even after all these years, Tony still has a reputation for being a little grumpy in interviews. In 2023, he was being interviewed before the opening night of a Broadway production called New York, New York, and reporter Rye Myers was very excited to speak to him. This was right after the news about murder and mayhem, but Tony was still grumpy and complained that TV news focuses on sensational stories instead of serious issues. However, Tony wasn't particularly happy with his questions. When Myers asked him if he liked pizza or hot dogs, Tony responded bluntly, "You know what you got to do, buddy. You got to come up with better questions." This was a quintessential Tony Danza moment, demonstrating his quick wit and no-nonsense attitude. Despite being a legend in the entertainment industry, Tony isn't afraid to speak his mind and keep reporters on their toes. In 1993, Tony and his wife Tracy went skiing. They were likely anticipating a fun vacation at Deer Valley, a posh resort in Utah, where Tony owned a house. However, things took a terrifying turn when Tony had a serious ski accident. He was traveling at about 50 miles per hour when he struck a rock and lost control, crashing into a tree. It was the kind of accident that people in Utah still talk about, and according to Tony's producer, locals began using the phrase "I Danza Ed" to describe a terrible wipe out on the slopes, making his crash legendary. After a small fall, he suffered a broken back, broken ribs, and numerous other cuts and bruises. The injury was severe enough that he required surgery to repair him, but fortunately, he recovered quickly and was soon back on his feet. However, years later, Tony disclosed that he was still dealing with some after effects of the accident, which left him crooked and always leaning slightly to the left. This may not seem like much, But for someone like Tony, who's always being in the spotlight was something he couldn't avoid. But, hey, nobody's perfect, right? Tony still has that charm and charisma, even if he's a little off kilter. 1993 was a difficult year for Tony, because in addition to his terrifying ski accident, he also lost his mother, which was a double blow, and the grief weighed heavily on his heart. Years later, Tony opened up about the accident on the Dr. Oz show, saying that his sadness over losing his mother was actually what caused him to crash on the slopes. Even tough guys like Tony have a positive side, and grief can affect anyone no matter how strong they seem. Tony's emotional breakdown on Dr. Oz wasn't the only time he talked about the subject. He was thinking about his mom while skiing, especially since it was the first Christmas without her. He became distracted by his thoughts and emotions, and that's when he lost control and crashed. It was a heartbreaking admission, and Tony even apologized to the audience for getting emotional on camera. Tony acknowledged that his mind wasn't focused on skiing that day, which is dangerous to do on the slopes. He later learned that his injuries could have been much worse. Many people who experience similar accidents end up paralyzed. In a 1995 interview, he revealed that he woke up feeling depressed on the day of the crash because he had lost his mother only a few months earlier, and the grief was still fresh. Tony's love life has been as interesting as his career. He's been married twice, both times to women he met at different stages of his life. His first wife was Rhonda Wyman, his college sweetheart from the University of Dubuque, and they got married in 1970. They had a son named Mark in 1971, but things didn't work out, and they divorced in 1974. Tony was able to walk again, even calling it a miracle, which is a testament to his strength and resilience both physically and emotionally. After Anthony and Rhonda decided to give love another chance, they remarried in 1983 and had a daughter named Gina. However, they divorced again in 1985, suggesting that Tony and Rhonda were not meant to be together. But they did start a lovely family. Tony never gave up on love after his two marriages to Rhonda in 1986. He married film producer Tracy Robinson the following year, and they welcomed their first daughter, Catherine, and their family was born in 1993. Complete after the birth of their second daughter, Emily, Tony, and Tracy appeared to be happy together for many years, but things began to fall apart. They split up in 2006, but Tony filed for divorce in 2011, claiming that they could no longer agree on anything. It took some time, but their divorce was finally finalized in 2013. Nobody knows exactly what happened between them, but it seems like they decided it was best to part ways. These days, Tony is all about his family. He's a proud grandfather who enjoys spending time with his grandchildren. Even though he acknowledges that it can be a little frightening at times, he finds great joy in seeing his grandchildren grow up. Tony is particularly proud of his son Mark and the way he is raising his own children. Tony even made a joke about how different their parenting styles are. As a father, Tony told Mark, "You take your kids to play baseball, but I used to take you to watch me play baseball. And at the end of the game, I'd ask, how did I do?" It's a humorous story that demonstrates how Tony has developed as a person. Tony's philanthropic contributions extend beyond his acting and singing career. In 2010, he was given the Inspire Award by AJRP, a major magazine for people over 50. This award honors individuals who inspire others with their ideas, passion, and never give up attitude. And Tony certainly fits that description. In 2012, he participated in a large concert to raise money for those affected by Hurricane Sandy, which was held at Madison Square Garden, and a documentary was produced about him. Later in the documentary, Tony discussed the importance of everyone banding together and supporting one another. As his father used to say, "We're all in this together." Tony's dedication to helping others didn't end there, though, as he is involved in numerous charities and causes. In fact, USA Today recognized him in 2013 for his efforts to help those in need. It is evident that Tony is not only a gifted entertainer, but also a kind and generous person who wants to improve the world.